Malcolm Gladwell, in his very famous quote, says, "There's more going on beneath the surface than we think, and more in little finite moments of time than we'd ever guess." And as I read this, I really couldn't help but notice the uncanny relation that this quote had to AppSec and vulnerability management in general. I'm a firm believer of the fact that every vulnerability has a story to tell, but the only question is, are we as a team looking closely at them? The decade that just went past us brought with it the best that could happen to application security. AppSec today enjoys a much deserved slot in primetime product management, and with the advent of DevSecOps tooling and automation, efforts of engineering, security, and DevOps are focused on the proverbial shifting security left. Security teams are looking to get the best in class tools running in CI. DevOps aims to raise the bar with release management and secure product throughput, and engineering teams too continue to equip themselves in not just remediating vulnerabilities but also in proactively writing secure code. And amidst all of this, vulnerability management platforms have geared up to sift, sort, merge, cleanse, and present data in a much more consumable format to their varied stakeholders. But we want to kind of take a step back and ask ourselves, what exactly are these platforms measuring? Oftentimes, what is usually measured are the basic demographics of vulnerabilities. Things such as how critical is the vulnerability, where was the vulnerability found, what's the fix, how complex is the fix, and so on. And this, in most cases, would usually roll up to higher level metrics such as how long has the vulnerability been open for, who's responsible, and whether or not this violates a particular compliance mandate and things like that. Now, while all of this is absolutely necessary and by no means trivial, we often ask ourselves, what more can we glean from all of this wonderful data? And this brings me to the second dimension, or the metadata of vulnerabilities, which personally is very interesting to study and in some cases might actually reveal more than just what meets the eye. Let's take an example of a situation where an executive is presented a dashboard with vulnerability metrics across all of their applications. Now, while they definitely would be interested to know the state of application security through metrics such as the number of critical, high, medium, and low severity flaws and other fundamental statistics, imagine if the dashboard also provided an interesting spin to this data. For example, what if the data could indicate on how or in which stage of the SDLC were the majority of the vulnerabilities introduced in? If the majority of the bugs had an architectural or a design related tone to it, then that would be a great way for the team to crank up their threat modeling efforts. Alternatively, if there's a pattern that indicates an increasing amount of issues with third-party libraries as opposed to custom-developed code, the focus can probably be moved to investing in a better source composition platform. And finally, metadata could also provoke interesting questions, such as how many vulnerabilities were actually found by design and how many by default. In the sense, how many issues actually mapped back to an initial application threat model, which could be a great validation for the team's understanding of proactive threats for an application. The possibilities are quite a many. Now, in saying this, I am in no way suggesting that existing efforts of vulnerability management are either insufficient or lacking in the right motivation. However, by having an ability to look beyond typical traffic light indicators, security program management might actually be able to drive strategic decisions using tactical vulnerability metrics. Training budgets, for example, can be focused on specific areas where data suggests there's a definite need as opposed to running mundane annual blanket programs. Security bandwidth too can be optimally utilized in areas where there's a need for a higher focus, thereby making better use of internal AppSec talent. Comparative metadata metrics can also be used to ascertain AppSec spend, such as those on commercial tools, if they only provide marginally higher, if not the same results than their open source counterparts, or through hybrid pen testing efforts. The possibilities are honestly many. And like many things in DevSecOps, on that utopian note, I'd like to leave you with this thought to ponder on. If the past decade brought AppSec mainstream, what do you think we should be focusing on this time around?